Dithda hadina pabuni, the bocasto MESKLA Brewyon Drudh, Ostis Genev Sove Berryman. Hello and welcome everyone to the MESKLA Brewyon Drudh podcasts, hosted by me, Sove Berryman. MESKLA Brewyon Drudh is a multi-platform project using sculpture making and conversation to explore contemporary Cornish cultural identity. Through workshops, podcasts, a symposium and an exhibition, the project invites people to share their experiences of identity and Cornwall, and their views on Cornish culture and its relationship to land, language, heritage, tourism, the Cornish diaspora and much, much more. These podcasts record conversations with guests whose research or lived experience touches on the project themes. The views, thoughts and opinions expressed are the speaker's own. All conversations are carried out with a spirit of generosity and openness, creating space for the discussions to twist and turn. And I'm very grateful to all who have taken part. This podcast is recorded in two parts. Artists Libita Sibungu, Georgia Gendall, Liam Jolly and I had planned to be in a room together to talk about our relationships with Cornwall. But we were meeting on one of the hottest days of the year when a storm brought the first rain for weeks and disrupted rail and road travel and took out some mobile masts. Due to the disruptions, we couldn't all be in the same place, so we recorded the conversation in two parts. This is part one. I'm joined by Georgia and Liam. Georgia is an artist, gardener, baker and member of the band Shagrat. Georgia has set up projects such as the Allotment Club, Residency in a Shed and Forced Collaboration. Liam is an artist, curator and member of the band Disco Rococo. Liam also set up and runs the Redruth Gallery auction house. We join the conversation with Liam telling us about being born and growing up in Redruth.
I grew up here. I was born here. I was born in Redruth a long time ago. And so I grew up in the town, went to school here, secondary school, all of that stuff, did sixth form here, then escaped. And we moved out of town, moved over towards sort of Perranporth way. So my kind of like teenage years were kind of spent in that direction, sort of Newquay kind of area, I suppose, Perranporth. And then went off to do the uni thing and planned really not to have come back again. But many years later, here I am back in Redruth. So, which was probably something I never planned.
Yeah.
But actually very happy about now.
That's interesting. We might come back to that as well.
It's a long one, yeah.
What about you, Georgia?
I grew up in Falmouth, born in Cornwall, and went to school there. Was there, and then did my uni stint away as well. But came back. I was away for 5 years and came back 6 or 7 years ago. So, yeah. But unlike Liam, I always imagined myself back here. There was no... Yeah, when I left, it was just to be able to come back again.
That's interesting.
So, yeah, maybe a bit of a different relationship with it.
Uh-huh.
Was that come back to Falmouth or come back to Cornwall generally?
Falmouth is just my home.
Yeah.
And I struggle to see myself anywhere else in Cornwall, but yeah.
Okay.
What helped you find that pathway, if it's a positive thing or not, to be an artist, to work as an artist? How did you come about that?
For me, I don't necessarily know. I think in school it was like maybe the only thing that I was good at or got like any praise for at all. So it sort of felt like something I should do. And my parents are in the creative industries, so it was sort of felt like something that was like in me and my sister. And then, yeah, I think it is just because it was the only thing that I got any praise for. But then I sort of followed in my sister's footsteps, did the foundation at Falmouth, and it sort of opened my eyes to what art could be, because I could never be like just a painter, just a sculptor, just a whatever. So just learning that it's such a broad thing, I was sold, because I could just do everything that I wanted to do under this umbrella of being an artist.
You chose to go away to study for degree. What was that? What was the sort of thinking behind that?
Just sort of like, I guess that's what I have to do. I didn't really think about it. It just felt like something everyone did. Mm-hmm. And after foundation, everyone was applying for unis, and I literally just picked a uni that I'd heard of before, which was St Martin's, and I didn't know of any other unis. It was just someone that worked for my mum had gone there, and she said, "I've heard this is quite a good art school." So I applied and I got in, and I just went because that's what I heard. It was an okay one, so I did that. So there was literally there was no formula to it. I wasn't sat at home like researching,
strategizing.
Yeah, like my whole life. No, it was just a series of like events that took me there.
Cool. What about you, Liam?
Yes, I guess similarly to Georgia, actually. Like, I mean, it was all I guess through education. It's the only thing I ever seemed to be any good at. You know, like when we'd have art class at school, and you know you'd get praised by the teacher. It was the only time it ever happened. So similar story to you, Georgia. But I guess I always knew that was what I wanted to do. I don't know why I knew that, but it was like I sort of want to be an artist. You know, I don't think I had any idea what that really meant at that point. And then went to did sort of sixth form thing. At the time it was a GMVQ when that was a thing, and it was just art and design. So just spent all day doing art and design, which was fantastic. And then I was really serious about, I was painting a lot then, and I was really serious about being an artist. And I remember my sixth form tutor said, you need to go to university if you're serious about this. And that had never ever even become something that I thought could be a possibility, you know. And I was not interested at all. I was like, nah, it's not for me, you know. But she was like, you're not going to be able to compete at all. Like, if you're serious about this, that's what you have to go and do. So I was very unsure of that. And yeah, it just seemed like that's what other people do, you know. So I took a year out, actually, and sort of was still like, nah, I really want to do this. So then, a bit like you, Georgia, I didn't really know where, how. And a friend of mine went to the University of Hertfordshire. He'd gone the year ahead of me. We were born on the same day in Redruth, so he was my friend growing up, and he was like, he went there, he said it was good, so I was like, I'll go there then. So you know, there was no kind of. I wish now, like looking back, that I'd you know done a bit more research, but hey, it was good. You know, it was a good. I sort of had a good time, and you know, and I think being from Cornwall, you know, the only sort of art. Well, it was the first time I went to an art gallery. It was like Tate in '95, I think, with sixth form. It was the first time I saw sort of contemporary art, and that was like going.
And just to specify, that would have been Tate London.
No, this Tate's Knife. Sorry.
Oh, that was Tate's Knife.
Yeah, so
okay.
We went on like a school trip, and I was just like, oh my god, this is amazing! Like you know, the Lanyons and the Frosts and all of those big sort of abstract paintings, and I was like, that's what art is, amazing. And I was banging into Picasso. I thought that was the pinnacle of it, you know, and I didn't know that this whole other world of art existed until I did go to London specifically to see a real Picasso, and happened to just swing by the Turner Prize that day. This was October '96, and had my mind completely blown. And I was like, I have no idea about what art is or what an artist is, so I've got a lot to do. I've got a lot of work to do. And I think at that point I realised that actually Cornwall wasn't going to give that to me, because I had been here thinking, oh, I've got this sussed, I know what it is, and then had my mind blown in London by seeing the Turner Prize, and was like, there's a whole other world out here. And I suppose that's where I thought, I need to be here. This is where it's happening, you know. I mean, we're talking sort of '96, so things have changed a lot since, but I think, yeah, that was, and in terms of continuing, it was finishing university, still being dead set on this is what I'm going to do, and sort of ended up coming back to Cornwall because of money, you know, working part-time in a record store, still being an artist, you know, and it's just been a really long, arduous time to keep trying to do it. So, but again, that's another long story that we'll perhaps come back to later.
But how do you find? So you came back to Cornwall because of money, and how did you find after those experiences of studying, sort of just outside London and in London, coming back to Cornwall and trying to continue your practices as contemporary artists, I suppose?
It took a few years to find any sort of feet in it. I think when I left, like, just, yeah, so Liam said he went and saw to the Tate and saw, like, big abstract paintings, and that was something that he was like, that's what I need to be doing. And for me, I always was like, I'd see art, or what was in a lot of traditional galleries, and that was never, I would see it and be like, it's still not me, it's still not me.
Yeah.
Like, it's just still not hitting the spot. And it was only when I moved to London that I just, learned that it could be so much more. But I still had this whole, like, thing of, like, I'm just not sure what part of it's me. But so, like, that in my uni course was nurtured, and I was very much, like, around people doing things that are a bit more, just a bit different to the norm. So coming back to Cornwall, it was quite confusing, because I had to sort of slightly find slightly different pockets of art and find different people. And because it's very accessible, or not accessible, but you can very easily see paintings in Cornwall and sculptures in Cornwall and seascapes and all that, but you have to, like, scratch the surface a bit to find people having other conversations and people doing things a bit differently. So moving back was like a few years of working out a bit, and actually starting my own things that maybe invited that to me, instead of trying to find it in different ways. So I think I ended up starting things. I think that was my sort of way of coping with Cornwall, and it being quite a big art scene, like, geographically. There's a lot of miles between. It's spread out, so it's not. You have to. I don't know. What about you?
I think we're quite similar in terms of, like, we sort of instigated our own things a little bit. I mean, when I came back, it was, I don't know, early noughties, and I felt like there was just nothing here. Like, you know, I think, I mean, Sova, you'll probably remember then. I mean, I don't think there was really. Like, there wasn't many, like, artists run projects or anything like that. The exchange didn't exist at that point. It was just Newlyn and Tate St Ives, and it didn't feel like, you know, talking about sort of contemporary, like, critically engaged contemporary art, real, you know, new stuff. I still felt it was just seeing, like, the old stuff, the old good stuff, you know. And
there was like, just to give a sort of shout to Penwith artist-led projects, Pulp. So there were these moments of things like flaring up, but there certainly wasn't that sort of structure of support.
No.
Around, you know, to help them continue.
And it felt hard to kind of work out where those things were and how to access them. So I mean, I just kind of set up shop in my mum's garage as a studio, and then had a few shows, like, out of Cornwall, so I was continuing to make stuff. But then it was just sort of found it was getting harder and harder, you know, and, like, just working in a shop. Well, I was working in a record shop, which was fun anyway, and playing in bands. And to be honest, I was like, I'm working part-time so I can be an artist. But I think the reality was that most of the time I was just kind of having a good time with my friends, playing in bands and, you know, talking about records in a shop. And it was, you know, the art was kind of like, we'll get back to that in a bit, you know. So it took a long time. It just felt that there was no one to engage with. Like, there was no... Like, now there's loads of us. We've got loads of art pals to talk to and have a coffee with, but it didn't feel that there was any. until I think it was about 2000 and, well, you'll tell me, Sove, when your Eek show at Crowdie was, because that was the sort of hallelujah moment for me in like walking into my old school and there being this art show. People had said, oh, someone's doing an art show up at the old school, and I was like, oh, it's going to be rubbish, right? Because, you know, that was how cynical I was about it all. And then I walked in and there was 2 fans on the wall with a black bag,
Andy Curry
blowing in the wind, and I was like, I think everything's going to be all right. And Sove had curated that show, so you
with Jackie Knight.
Right, okay. So that was, what year was that?
That was 2005.
Right. Was it really? Jesus.
Yeah. Jackie and I had both just come back from our MAs in London, and we're both like, okay, we're just going to have to do something, aren't we, now we've got here? A bit like you were saying, Georgia, like, I really relate to that strategy, I suppose, of deciding to do one's own stuff. Well, I'll make it happen. Do you think there's something about, so we've talked about doing independent projects, artist-led projects. Is there anything about the framework, the landscape of Cornwall, the particular situation that encourages that independent sort of making, or? The reason I ask is because I found, like, I've worked in London and Bristol and Cornwall, and my experience sometimes being in a larger conurbation, certainly in London, was almost feeling a bit suffocated with all the stuff, so much stuff to go on, like that's going on. My eyes and ears just completely fill and brimming. And whenever I've been back in Cornwall, I feel like I can sort of mentally breathe a bit more, and there's space for me to make my work. And I really relate that to the particular landscape situation of us being a peninsula. There's being a lot of sky, a lot of sea. There's a lot of big open space, and that kind of has an impact on my ability to create. I wondered if you shared that experience or no.
I definitely think there's more space to make things happen here, and maybe being someone from Cornwall in London, and then being someone from Cornwall in Cornwall, I felt I had a bit more confidence to make things happen in Cornwall that I might have not have felt in London, just through belonging a bit more, and belonging in that space and being able to hold space through belonging, that I maybe gave me a bit more confidence to be able to say, right, I'm going to make this thing happen, or right, I'm just going to, I think that's maybe how I feel a little bit.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, actually. And what you're saying about being in London, Sove, there's too much of things, you know, like when I first came back to Cornwall, it was that early noughties thing, so I'm going to talk in a musical sense now, but like there was like, London was alive with gigs, you know, it's like the time of like the Libertines and the Strokes and all that kind of like the indie sleaze, which is now come back again, full circle. It's now fashionable yet again. You know, we'd go to like indie club nights and there'd be 4 bands, cheap beer, and it was, you know, you could go to something every night. And I came back to Cornwall loving that life, and there was nothing, you know, there was literally nothing. But what I guess there was the opportunity was to start something, you know, and spaces to go and have a chat. Like there was a place in Truro that first started putting on like a little club night. It was like, can I do this thing, get some bands, you know, and that would have been impossible to do in London because it was there, you know. So it that thing you talked about, confidence, Georgia, yeah, it was kind of like, well, we can try something here, and it doesn't matter. Like, so start it small, build it up, and I suppose doing that is done it musically and artistically since. It's like, because there is space to try these things, I suppose. I don't know if that answers it.
But and then how do you find, like, do you feel that being based in Cornwall or coming from Cornwall at all sort of plays out when you're working with people from elsewhere, or maybe showing your work elsewhere, or trying to get gigs elsewhere, or does it have a negative or a positive impact? Or
I can't say I've personally found either, really. No, I don't know. Have you, Georgia?
I feel like for some of the things I do, it's a bit of like a unique selling point sometimes. And I think that's because maybe people who aren't engaged in what's happening in Cornwall can't believe anything's happening here. And so a few times I've felt like it's a bit of like a whoa from Cornwall, and making things happen in Cornwall. It felt like a bit of a unique selling point sometimes.
But I've had it earlier, like, you know, quite some time ago, where people would be like surprised.
Yeah.
That, you know, what, you have a nightclub? Like,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like, you know, I remember someone said to me once, they were like, what do you do when you want to go out in Cornwall?
Yeah.
Where do you go? I was like, to the pub, to the club. And they were like, club. And I was like, you know, and I remember that being a thing. Like, that seems to have stopped. I mean, I don't notice that anymore. That was, I certainly remember that kind of response. But I feel that, like, I mean, people have got a better understanding, or maybe a skewed understanding of what Cornwall is now, thanks to all the TV programmes. And, you know, it feels that people have got, like, a bit more, like, oh, they do have electric and, you know, and stuff like that.
I think people are, like, just shocked that you're not painting seascapes and you're doing something a bit different. And we have a musical, me and Liam are both in bands and have a musical thing, and I think people are shocked of maybe the music that's coming out of Cornwall, or that could be possible here, that you wouldn't just be playing the violin on a rock about the sea. Like, I think there's just like a bit of surprise, because I mean the TV shows are
and
all about
there is a lot of that as well. You know, like
so
even in sort of a music hat on, there's so much of that stuff, and it's not to knock it, because there's places for everything, but
absolutely
there's so much. You know, I think when I get an artist come towards me now with an acoustic guitar talking about the sea, I'm like, I'm all right, thanks, mate. You know, it's like I want to see shag rap. You know, I want to see something different. You know, and I think I suppose things like what you're talking about musically, Georgia, like with shag rap, with what you do, it's like those things have started to pop up more. People are being more confident that actually there is a platform for those sorts of artists or artworks or projects to exist now, because there's an audience. So whereas before, people did want to hear the songs about the sea played by the acoustic guy, you know, in the pub for free.
When growing up in Cornwall, that's like, I just so wish I knew that could be here, and I didn't know that could be here.
What,
and
the alternative?
Totally. Like that, like it was just so like one string of what it could be. And though I was in a creative family and I knew there was like this other bit, but it was never what I know now. But that's maybe just age. But I just hope that people have access to alternative.
I have a slightly different feeling to you on that. I guess being from Redruth, like, was always aware of like Aphex Twin and things like that, and those kinds of things that are happening here, and like the kind of rave scene, and like I feel that there was I mean, Redruth's been very edgy in many ways compared to perhaps lots of other sort of more coastal towns. So I suppose I always had an understanding that there was something other, but didn't know what that other was. And I suppose that's what you said earlier about the artwork. It was like seeing those paintings and stuff here, and then going to London and knowing there was something else. And finding what that could be. I suppose that was the exciting bit.
I sort of, and maybe it is just about, like, we're all different ages here. I think we cover 3 different decades. So we've had different experiences of sort of growing up, and and I lived in a lot of like winter lets and pretty like not so nice rental accommodation. So seeing or perhaps experiencing those rougher edges, what then sort of frustrated me quite a lot when I started working as an artist, which I didn't go to uni till my mid-20s. So when I came back and I started working as an artist, what I felt frustrated about was that sort of the more professional kind of art stuff seemed to not itself be that aware of those rough edges. And I was thinking, hang on, that's been there for decades, right? Like, and also we just really watched the complete demise of like two big mining towns of Camborne and Redruth through the 80s and the 90s, like slowly peeling away. And so like I can sort of take that away from my eyes. So I felt like there was a moment in the 2000s that was almost sort of like, right, now we're going to be professional creatives, and that stuff doesn't exist. People didn't want to see those rough edges so much. And I do wonder about tourism as well. If we're trying to sell Cornwall as like a nice seaside place, do tourists want to see those rough edges? No. What do you guys think about that?
I was just thinking of a conversation I had a little while ago about it was with someone that sort of moved down here, and they were talking about my work originally being like urban, and from it's like it's too urban. It's like what do you mean it's too urban? Like it's like my work's my work. It's always looked like that. And it's like and I thought a lot about it after, and I thought, is this because this is someone who's moved from London to Cornwall and lives coastal and has this idea of what Cornwall is, and I just was thinking about the sort of chocolate box version of Cornwall, and then this rough-edged inland version of Cornwall that I know very well, and that I thought that made absolute sense to me. And funny enough, Georgia, it was you. We had an opening, and we were sat on the steps one day here at Auction House, and you said, "Oh my God, I always forget how urban Redruth is."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, good. It's not just me making this up then. Like someone else has noticed, So
no, I've always felt Redruth, and St Austell maybe are like the urban bits of Cornwall.
Yeah.
Truro's quite urban.
Yeah. St Austell's got a tower block.
Yeah, just has it got 3?
I don't know. I used to ride the lift in one when I was a naughty child, eating batter bits from the fish and chip shop.
It's really niche, so
It is. But I think again that contrast though of the romanticism of the coastline, and the coastline is harsh, but it has been really romanticised. The contrast of that and the poverty that exists in Cornwall. I mean, I feel like there's something in both of your works that's sometimes like making a point about, I don't know, some of that stuff. Like, Georgia, you've just done the Worm Charming Championships. And
World.
World, yeah.
It's not World. The bloody newspapers have twisted it.
Typical. Cornwall lies again.
It's actually the Daily Star.
Oh wow. But it feels like there's something around that is. I mean, it's fun, but it's also making a point about connection with land.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking on the way here, and earlier I sort of made this point, but because I'm from here, I feel like I can claim that space and make that happen. I'd never dream of making that happen somewhere that I didn't know so well or feel like I could claim that space in. And that's interesting, because if I was in London, I wouldn't, or anywhere else, I wouldn't make the work that I feel like I'm allowed to make here, or claim the space that I feel like I'm allowed to claim here.
And you're also drawing the participants or the audience's attention to the land.
Yeah, and sort of asking them to do something that's really quite silly and takes a lot of confidence, and it's a big ask. So completely drawing attention to the land in a really silly way, but in like a perfect way, because I mean on Sunday we didn't have any worms, and that was really interesting because we're in the middle of a massive heat wave where it hasn't rained in about a month apart from today. So that's, people are learning about what it means what weather means to our, and this is we did it in a community field, and just what it means to that space that the town's built around. It's very interesting.
And you also have a project where you've been growing oats, Cornish oats.
It's sort of my sister's project. But I don't. I was growing some Cornish oats that our granddad gave to us, that are a species of oat that have sort of extinct. But my sister is writing a PhD on it, and she's trying to bring these oats back. So I was growing these oats that our granddad gave us, that he was growing, but they weren't actually the Cornish oat. So I was growing them for years, and then my sister came back and researched it and said actually they weren't the right one. So I was trying to circulate this oat that wasn't actually the specific one, but it still is oat from Cornwall, and but it's not the my sister's sort of doing that, and I'm sidelining it ever so slightly.
That's quite an interesting conversation though, around like the oats as a sort of metaphor for Cornish identity.
Absolutely,
in a way.
yeah.
And there's so much, like we've all heard people who say you can only be Cornish if you're like great, I don't know, amoebas were Cornish, or you move to Cornwall. You know, we've got national minority status. I often feel, well, if a nation, you can apply for nationhood, right? You can apply to be a citizen of a nation. So if we're a nation, then can't people apply to be citizens of the nation? And that oat project feels a bit like, oh right, so this is the authentic Cornish. Oh, it isn't the authentic Cornish oat, but it still actually is the authentic Cornish oat, because you've been growing it and it's there.
And there was this lovely link with my granddad giving it to us that felt really like special, like handed down from a Cornish man to the grandchildren to keep going, which felt very like, that felt symbolic of our Cornishness. Which was nice.
How do you feel about sort of Cornishness, Liam?
Do you know what? I've been thinking more and more about this recently. I feel that this is becoming more of a conversation generally. I mean, things like, Seamus's brilliant podcast, the reason why things. I mean, I was listening to that, and it was like I sort of started asking myself lots of questions. I thought it was a real, it was a good sort of trigger, I guess, to dig into some of that stuff.
Definitely.
And it's stuff that I've been thinking a bit more about over the last few years. I think I'd always just taken it for granted. My dad's from London, and so I've always felt like, I don't know, that I've always felt, I get strung up for saying this, but I've always felt more at home in London, right? They've always had this weird, and my mum's from Redruth, and her gran, so that we're Redruth as well, but we didn't know my mum's granddad. She didn't know her dad, so there's a bit of that Cornishness that I don't know anything about. Which is, to me, kind of quite fascinating. And in my dad's side, I've recently, sort of 10 years ago, found my older brother, who was like my dad's oldest son from a sort of previous marriage, who's like 52, 53 now. So he's like, was born in East London. He's a Cockney. Lives in Canvey Island. Works in the city. So I know so much about that side of my family that are all EastEnders in London, or spread out now because they've all been
priced
booted
out. East End.
So I've always felt more the more of that made sense to me. But alongside that, you say about Cornishness, and this might sound going a bit too, I don't know, I've always felt more Redruth than Cornish. And I know I don't mean to sort of like get too small about it, but it's, that's made more sense to me, that I'm from Redruth, right? And I don't know, these are the questions I've been asking myself recently, because, there's a lot about Cornwall that to me personally makes no sense, right? I don't feel part of, and I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is, because I'm sort of, sort of struggled with this thing of being from Redruth for years. Like I said to you, I wanted to leave and get out of here, and was just like, people would say, "Where are you from?" And you go, "Redruth." They go, "Oh," like, you know, you would be judged. You would be like, "Oh, well, what, you know, what are you doing here? Kind of, what's your opinion?" You know, do you know?
Mm-hmm.
There was a kind of
totally. Well, that's the sort of classist sort of issues around Cornwall.
I suppose
isn't it?
actually it is class over, yeah, because I suppose some of that stuff of Cornwall felt beyond me. You know, some of the frilly, nice kind of, you know, I don't know I don't know what the word, but yeah, I mean, so being from Redruth, there's a certain that grittiness, that kind of like rough around the edgesness. It's like, oh, you're from Redruth, you know. So I, you know, and going to school here was, you know, it was tough, you know, like it was a tough school, you know, because it was a poor town, you know, and again, I didn't fit in. I didn't play rugby, so I wasn't a sport kid, you know, and was the kid who only sort of did well in the art class. That's probably because nobody else cared about it. You know what I mean? So wanted to leave, wanted to get out, and I think that's for me where the London thing was. The London was like, oh, I'm going to go there and be myself, and then coming back and then moving back to Truro, and then I met my now wife who was working in Redruth for Shelter, the homeless charity, and she said, oh, our landlord at the office is building a flat. We could look at moving into it. And I was like, there is no way I am going back to Redruth, you know, because it was this kind of like this sort of like, I knew that's where I was from, but it's almost, I don't want to go back there. I've moved away from that. It's like, you know, it wasn't positive, you know, and the reaction from people wasn't, it was like, I'm done, right? Anyway, here I am, sort of dragged my heels for a while, and actually now I would not have it any other way. I love being here now, like absolutely love it, and I feel so proud now to be from Redruth. I like, you know, I feel like there's a good community here, and I mean even things like, you know, we sort of a couple of years ago started going to the Red Lion in town, which for years if you said you want to go to the Red Lion, it'd be like no way, because you get beaten. Like it's you know, go to the Red Lion, actually you feel more part of the community than ever now, because you walk in and they're like, you know, there's the kind of the Redruth characters, shall we say, and you know, people are still. We had a big conversation recently. There's all these conversations going on about the future of Redruth, and these people talking about what it's going to be, and it's like what it needs and what it doesn't need, and they sort of were turning their nose up at things like the Red Lion and that thing you was talking about earlier, Sove, of trying to pretend that the rough edges aren't there. I feel that it's being glossed over, and I keep now pulling that up and saying to people, no, actually, these people are here. There's still problems in this town. But actually going to places like the Red Lion and engaging with that part of the community has actually made me feel even more part of this community. So, yeah, I think, I don't know if that answers your question about Cornishness, but I certainly now feel much more myself, I guess. Here, I feel like my place is here now, you know, and I suppose with the practice and with all the things we do, I'm now seeing this is my base, this is my home, this is where I love, and this is where I want to do some great things for the community and for people, but use the work to try and go elsewhere and explore and network and find others beyond. But
are you at all driven by wanting to demonstrate or make people look at, this is also what Cornwall is. This is, you know, 100%. Redruth is here, and 100%. It's not just that 100%, ice creams and
because I think I get annoyed about that generally with things when people are just like, that's that and that's all it can be. It's like, no, like, I don't agree with that with anything. Do you know? I think there's anything can be anything, can't it? You know, and you know, when I started to Auction House here, like I had conversations with people, and there was a particular funding thing I had a conversation with, and they said, oh, you know, we couldn't fund you because you're talking about high art and it's not for the community, it's not, you know. And I was like, okay, at the time I thought, oh, fair enough. And over the period of time that I've been running this project, I completely disagree with that now, because the way I see it is like, yes, what we deal in is a niche thing.
And when you say this project, that's
the Auction House. Yeah. So, you know, contemporary art, the things that us guys do, yeah, it's niche in the grand scheme of things, I guess. But I was having this conversation with Kev, who runs the record store downstairs, and he said the other day, he was like, Liam, the thing is, he said, I sell vinyl records to people. That's also niche, you know? And we are public facing here, the doors are open, and the amount of people from this town that come in to see what's going on, I've had the most incredible conversations with people in this building about art that aren't artists, right? The artists come in, they have a look and they bugger off. And like the people from the town come in and they're fascinated, and they at first are like, what's going on here, right? But they engage, they talk, people have come back. There was a guy recently who brought his mum back. He said, can I bring my mother back? And I was like, yeah, because for me, doing things, it's like I was from here, I moved away, I went and studied a thing that I was passionate about, and I just feel that I've come back and I just want to do what I do in the town where I'm from. So like you said, Georgia, maybe doing it somewhere else might not feel quite so natural, but it's like, I feel like I'm from here, I'm allowed to do that, you know? But around all these conversations about the town and what's going on, there's still this thing of like, well, I still feel I'm having to sort of fight to defend it, that this is also allowed to be here, you know, like, you know, I mean, an early plan for the redevelopment of this was that it was going to become a commercial gallery. And it's like, you know, how's that any more, you know, for the community than what I'm doing? So, yeah, I mean, I'm very much feel that, like, this is a different version of Cornwall that I want people to also see, you know, that this is here and the people of Redruth are here. And this not just brush them under the carpet and try and sort of put in French farmers markets and gentrify the place, which I know I'm also now part of the problem. But it's like, which I don't feel necessarily great about, but it's also, that's trying to sort of hold on to the reins of that a little.
I've often struggled with that, actually, like... I want oat flat whites. I'm absolutely joyous that I can get an oat flat white in Redruth. But I'm also really aware of the potential implications of that around gentrification and around exclusivity.
Yeah.
And I suppose the thing that I always strive for, or is a sort of campaign, is that actually it's okay to want or to have like an oat flat white at the same time as wanting to go and have a pint at the Red Lion,
yes.
or just have a little chat with someone like just somewhere you don't even know in the street, because you're both sat on the same bench.
It's that it becomes a problem when those things can't sit alongside each other, and that's not our fault. That's like the flat white being pulled above the day-to-day running of a town or something. It's like,
and there's also something that's kind of concerns me a lot, actually, is particularly for Redruth at the moment, and I should imagine Camborne as well, is that as the coast is kind of being sucked up by, you know, second home owners and stuff, it feels like, you know, that's closing in on us now, you know, and it feels like we're the last strip left.
But the tide's coming.
It really is coming. It does feel a lot like that. And
it is, but it's also like that's just what is being projected out of Cornwall. But that's actually like, I mean, like there's so much stuff that's still, like, you know, I work for a food charity in Falmouth, and it's being swamped as well.
Is it? Yeah.
And it's like, we run a meal service for people that need it, and we have done it for 3 years, and we're still cooking for the same amount of people. And it's just those sort of things are just getting tides coming around them, and they've been forgotten about, but it's still happening, and I don't know,
I definitely
scary.
noticed the gentrification of places like Falmouth
100%.
I mean, I suppose that was my sort of concern with that thing of the tide coming in here. Like, so when with lockdown, there was those stories, which I'm sure happened all over Cornwall, but there's those stories of people buying houses like without coming to see them, and like the house prices in Redruth have gone through the roof. And there's a lot of that I kind of enjoy in terms of that sort of young professionals moving here and sort of changing the community slightly. Like, you know, like we were talking earlier about some of the artists that have moved to Cornwall, that you know, they feel that they've moved down from London or whatever, and they're actually going to stabilise the scene because they're coming to stay rather than coming to go. So perhaps we don't have that thing we were talking about when I first moved back, when felt like there was nothing going on. Maybe artist projects and stuff will sort of sustain now, and things will have a good scene. But it's that. There's been lots of conversations that, oh, you know, we're looking at Redruth because we've heard it's amazing, and it's like there's that I guess what I'm trying to say is it feels like it's now getting its own chocolate box version.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, and that sort of makes me a bit nervous. I mean, we were joking recently because there's all these people moving in, various projects popping up, and we were like, whoa, we were here one night with the band, like Alice and Stuart, we were having a fag outside, and we were talking about this, and we were like, can everyone just give us like a couple more years? Like, we feel like we've been here for ages and just chipping away doing things, and we've only got our groove going on. And now it feels like we're being swamped with all this activity of people wanting to come and join in on the party, and it's like, just come back in a few years' time. It's like, give us 5 minutes just to enjoy it ourselves. I don't know whether that's really small-minded, but that's what we were saying.
No, it feels like there's something in that about wanting to have your voice heard, or like with that tide coming in. All those analogies we've just spoken about is like, is there a threat of the sort of place or the ground that you've both spoken about that you kind of claim or connect with being, I don't know, taken away, or maybe that sounds too like threatening, but that it's going to shift again, and it won't be your space.
It's so difficult to talk about it because it creates a problem within you of like wanting to share, wanting to be inclusive, and that being exactly what like my work's about: sharing, being inclusive, opening up the space. I don't even know how to frame it, but there's definitely still a territorial part of me that feels it as well, and I guess that also links back to feeling Cornish, being allowed to, and feeling like you're allowed to do that, and then I don't even know how to word it without sounding like a complete.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I think about some of those tensions.
There is
around
definitely, and
totally wanting to be open.
yeah,
But like, if personally, I can feel quite a vulnerability, like a fear of home, of a safe place where I know who I am and where I can make the kind of art I make and chat to people on the street who I know through like caring for my gran, or for like gone to school with, whatever. And that being, and somewhere, some sort of they, like a mythical they, not understanding the fragility and specialness of all those little connections, and and how easy they can be broken and lost. And it's interesting, Liam talking about the East End a bit there, and like I've lived in different parts of London. I've lived in a few different parts of the East End, in Plaistow and Stratford, and also down in South East London in Deptford. And if you look at the histories of the clearances and gentrifications of East London, like it's really scary, really horrible stuff, and breaking up of communities. And of course, the histories that Britain and indeed Cornish people have been a part of in ripping up communities around the world. I suppose I feel an echo of some of the fears of that happening here, and then on a really like personal level feeling like, but then where will I go?
Yeah.
Like what? There is no place then for me.
Yeah. No, you just put it exactly how I wanted to put it.
Yeah.
And changed my territorialness to vulnerability, which of course are very similar things. But I do think Cornwall feels like a vulnerable place, and particularly with tourism and the chocolate box version of it being sent up the train line for people to come and consume. and for people to come and live here, which is brilliant. It's a fragile thing, and I feel that conflict within me, and I don't think there's an answer to the conflict.
No, I agree.
Or an easy way of explaining it.
No, I mean you've both articulated that same thing that I was thinking too. We've sort of said it differently, but we're all saying the same thing. It is, I think you're right. There is no answer to it. I suppose the awareness of it, perhaps. Do you feel you've become more aware of it recently?
Yeah, I do.
I do as well. Yeah, and I don't know why that is. I don't know if that's as it feels like, particularly. So I'm just going to talk about Redruth again. It feels like it shifted very quickly within 5 years. Like all of a sudden, and it feels like it's currently being sort of turbocharged even further, to become this thing. There's lots of conversations. We've been to a few meetings to hear about the plans for the town, and it's like, this is all good, but just let's, I brought it up actually at a meeting we went to. The lady said, what would you like Redruth to be if you came back in 10 years? And there was all these answers of like, we would like it to be a sort of, global scientific art community. And it was like all these crazy things. And there was a few sort of local businesses at the table. And I was just like, I would like it to actually be that these people were still here. Like that little coffee shop that those guys run is still here. Or maybe they've moved to a bigger coffee shop, and that person's still here and that person's still there. Because there was like a video that I'd seen on YouTube probably about 10 years ago or so, and someone had done this walk around of Redruth, just filming it, and it was all boarded up. It looked like a sort of, war zone. And I was like, actually, if you go and find that video, you see what it looks like now, it has changed and it is better. So let's just let it do its thing, but it feels like this kind of speeding up to kind of almost bulldoze, make new. And it's like, let's embrace what's here. And I suppose that fragility and that kind of nervousness that we can't quite articulate or answer, it's around that stuff of trying to protect that a little.
Yeah, and I think there's like the chocolate box version of it that's a problem, and then there's this also other version of it which is, I think, due to like social media, of like a lot of our histories and mythologies and folklore and stuff being trendy, turned into this trendy thing that's very much to do with social media, and I feel protective of that. I really feel protective of that, and I don't really know. That's another tension inside me that I don't really know how to cope with.
Oh yeah, I feel similarly.
I just don't know what to do about that, because it's just
I felt particularly frustrated by the real interest in the last few years in that sort of mysticism of Cornwall, and sort of really sort of focusing on Cornwall as this mystical place with these standing stones, with these like amazing people like Ithel Colquhoun, or I feel like that all feels like part of a heritage of otherness and othering, and that kind of like aspects of colonialism, actually, like taking of somewhere without looking at the whole, without understanding or thinking about the implications of that. Also, like without giving the time that the place and those people of the place perhaps need to catch up with those conversations. Because if something's just mundane and usual to you, it's not other, and it's not special, and it's not romantic.
Absolutely.
So it can take a little while to shift perspective. And like almost everyone in Cornwall laughs about drekly, right? But there is something there around just need a bit more time. It's kind of what you were saying there, Liam, about like to process that thinking, and bearing in mind that that mysticism, that other stuff that's not just the rare, special, exciting bit. Actually, like, I don't know, a mate who runs a market stall is also rare and special and exciting, and all of it is not, not just that little magical bit that looks great in a Facebook post.
That was the stuff I was sort of meaning earlier when I said when you asked me about Cornishness, and I said, well, a lot of it never really made sense to me because that stuff didn't really, it was never on my radar. Do you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I know we've got standing stones and we live by the coast and we've got this amazing coastline and I knew all that stuff, but the myths, the legends and all, I just didn't know about it.
And it also just is.
What's that?
Well, it just is, like...
Yeah, it's just there. It's
there.
Just like, so.
And when you're from it, it doesn't maybe... I mean, quite a lot of it we have no idea about, really.
No.
We grew up going and visiting my granny and granddad, and he was a Cornish language expert, so he wrote several Cornish dictionaries and... was a complete fanatic about the Cornish language and Cornish culture. And we used to go and visit them in their house in Liskeard, and their house was like a museum to Cornishness. And so on the walls they'd have bows and arrows and corn dollies they had made, and it was literally insane. And he would talk, the dog was trained in Cornish, and they had all the, she had kept doves, and she went and cooed to them in Cornish. And there was just this, it was as a child, it was weird to me. And it was this weird world that I stepped into. And when we went and stayed there for the weekend, we would be sort of processing wool and be put in the barn and be making corn dollies and that. So it's quite funny that then this whole culture around being Cornish is being turned into this trendy thing, because to me it's almost like a hellish thing that I used to have to go do some weekends, and I just wanted to be watching TV. And so it just is, and that's something I grew up with. And so also the Cornish language was something that I never wanted to learn, because to me it was something that old people did, and they were stuck in their way. And and now, since my granddad's died and I've researched it, it's amazing and I want to learn all about it. But it was never something that I wanted him to pass on to me as a child, or it was just stuck in their ways. And it's so interesting that it's sort of this there's I don't know, it's a funny tension with me and my family, my family thing of it just being a thing that is.
I think that thing about it just being a thing that is really important, and that I always feel Cornishness is granite and solidity and laughing and carrying on and overcoming adversity. And having a relationship with the land, and definitely walking across the scrub land of the old mine works. But it also just is, and it being sort of magicified somehow. It concerns me that it takes something from it. I wondered if there was just anything else you wanted to add about your particular artwork or practices, or being artists in Cornwall, maybe how you see things might develop. Or
So, I mean, I don't know how to answer that, actually. I mean, I don't feel that my work is necessarily, if we're talking about Cornwall, I don't feel that it's there's not much there that's as I'm saying that, actually, I'm also about to contradict myself. So when I was saying to you earlier about this thing about being from here, not knowing my sort of my mum's granddad, she didn't know who he was, blah, blah, blah. So this thing about family and lineage and all this stuff started to come into my work. And so I've been doing more and more sort of research about that. And this thing about being in Redruth and kind of making peace with the fact that I'm here, I've become completely obsessed with Cornwall as this kind of anchor, if you like. I was very aware of the fact, and it was lockdown really, that, I mean, I never used to be a walker really. I would sort of go to the gym, that was my exercise, and then when my wife would be like, do you want to come for a walk? I'm like, nah, I've been to the gym, you know, and I'd be quite happy sat at home getting on with some work on my computer or something, you know. But obviously lockdown, we all were able to go for our hour a day exercise, weren't we? And I just sort of fell in love with like that, actually, and tried to go out most days now, and I've spent an awful lot of time in Cornwall, and just realised that walking around the town through lockdown and seeing the Carn from different perspectives, and realising that actually for most of my life that has been there, you know, this kind of thing, which was just there. It's just Carnbray. It's just Carnbray. Like that's home, you know. And even as you come over Bodmin Moor, you can kind of see it. It's sort of silhouette, can't you, in the distance? You're like, that's where we're going. So that, I suppose, has started to sort of figure in my practice a bit more, which is something that I would never have seen coming. I mean, I've been sort of collecting stones from there and painting them in colours and sticking them on things, but it's like, I mean, with my practice at the moment, it's just keeping going, I suppose. And like I said earlier, trying to find ways to sort of branch out, being very aware of that I'm here now, and like I say, made peace with being here now and quite happy about being here, but I don't want to be just here, you know. I want to sort of be able to go to see things and to travel and network and meet people in other places, because I believe that, you know, that thing about things can be different things, and I think by going and seeing other and bringing other back kind of keeps things exciting. So I haven't answered your question at all. I've just waffled at you, but
well, you have.
Has it given you time to think about what you're going to say?
I actually don't know if I can remember the question.
I thought what was interesting about what you said there was just about it being Cornbray didn't used to be important to you, and now it is, and it is that thing of it being there, and that it's always been in your life, like looking at it out of the corner of your eye.
But I think as well, there's this thing, really quickly, I'm sort of digressing very slightly, but there's this thing as well in Cornbray that, I don't know, you can see, because obviously you see both coasts, and you can see quite, on a clear day, quite a way up, can't you? And it's just this kind of feeling of being very small and very insignificant, and being aware of the things that have happened on this land over lots and lots and lots and lots of years, you know, and then kind of feeling about where you fit into that. You know, it's like sitting in the cups and saucers rocks, you know, which are my faves. Like, how many people have done that? I don't know. It's like those sorts of conversations that I have with myself up there, and just even having a little lean on a rock and feeling that sort of energy. It's like, you know, I think it's a bit of a driver. It's like, well, what am I saying? What's my point? Do you know? Like, so there's something quite wonderful about that, which is a very new thing for me.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, it's great.
Does sound cool.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice.
Um,
Not in a heat wave though.
True. Yeah, I don't know. I think I just want to continue, like, working with the land, like feeling it with my hands, and just really try and bring that into my work more. And yeah, I think it's this thing of feeling that's become more and more important to me recently, and it's all about my hands and where they're going and what they're touching. And I think that is something I just have to keep on making sure I do, because it's so easy to just like shut the door and think that there are other ways of working, particularly for me, but there isn't any other way of working. I have to go and feel in order to be able to work. So yeah, I think that's just something I keep on having to make sure I do, and I'm hopefully putting the wheels in motion for that to happen more easily for me. So yeah, just to keep on like putting my hands in the ground and yeah, things like that, and try and like just respond to it, and yeah, just keep on feeling.
Sounds good. Well, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure.
As you know, I returned back to Cornwall after another one of my away stints in 2015, and you two being here and the things that you two put on and do, you know, amongst another great group of people we both know, are part of what made me feel like, oh, good, it's going to be okay. So I was able to return. We could return the favour.
Oh, great.
Liam.
Yeah. Oh, thanks.
Thank you. Miraz Agas Gosloers. Thank you for listening. Further episodes of the MESKLA Brewyon Drudh podcast can be found on my website, sovaberryman.co.uk. That's SOVAYBERRYMAN.co.uk, where you'll also find guest biographies and a resource page of links to further reading on the topics discussed. If you feel inspired to join the MESKLA conversation about contemporary Cornish cultural identity, please get in touch with me, Sove Berryman, via my website or social media. You'll find MESKLA Brewyon Drudh on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. The MESKLA Brewyon Drudh podcast and project has been made possible due to a wealth of in-kind help and support from many parties, including the Wenda Perrin Festival, Gorseth Cernay, Cornwall Council's Cornish Language Office, Coethus Yaeth Canuic, Crescent Cernay, Cornwall Neighbourhoods for Change and Falmouth University Falmouth Campus. The project has been supported using public funding by the National Lottery through Arts Council England, and further funding has been gratefully received from Historic England via Redruth Unlimited. Agas Termin, Agas Quellas. Thank you for your time. See you later.